Hello friends, welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel. Hope you guys are doing wonderfully well. This is one for the fans outside of the greedy six. Let's talk about Nottingham Forest. Are they being greedy with the moolah that they're spending? That's what I want to dive into. Nottingham Forest fans, this is one where it's a bit of a fact-finding mission for me, and I really want to know what you think about this. And also fans of teams like myself, QPR, have been in the Premier League, spent money, didn't work. A lot of talk about this doing a Fulham idea when you spend over 100 million. Of course, there's other examples. I think Aston Villa brought in 15 players back in 2019, just stayed up by a point. So it's risky business. It is risky, but is it necessary? That's what we're going to dive into. And I'm just going to try and get across the situation here. Let's start off because we've got to talk about how you're going to fit all these players in. We'll look at that in a second. Let's talk about the ins and outs initially, because I think there will be some elements here that they'll sit on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence and they'll go, they won't have looked into it properly. Okay. So before we get into all of that, if you're new to the channel and you enjoy this video by the end of it, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. As we record this, we're very close to 200k. So yeah, it'd be awesome if we could get over that mark. I mean, mind blowing. Let's have a look at the people involved here. And then we'll just have a look at this overall thing because, you know, at this point in the season, it is about squad building, right? And actually, let's have a look at the squad first. Looking at it through the beautiful app that is SofaScore, link is in the description. So, first of all, this is the general setup. Steve Cooper likes to play 3-4-1-2, did the exact same with Swansea, and you expect him to do the same. When we have a look at the squad, they are now in a position where they have serious numbers. Serious numbers. Emmanuel Dennis, Awani, Brennan Johnson. There's a quality to it as well. Moving to midfield, so many midfielders. So many midfielders. Freuler's come through. Toffolo comes in. It's amazing. And in terms of the players that kind of left over, I think that's the thing that we need to talk about here. And I'll illustrate it in a different way in just a second. But then into defence, Bianconi comes through the door. Niakate, Omar Richards, who I think's got injured recently. Nico Williams, Steve Cook, who only arrived sort of late last year as well. And then a couple of new goalkeepers as well. And when we look at it, this is according to Transfer Market at this moment in time. The income, 4.5 million. Hang on, let me just drag it across. 4.5 million. The expenditure, 133 million. Yeah. For obviously a squad that you don't know if it's going to gel or not. So it is risky, right? But I think what's important to say here is to look left a little bit. Forget about the 4.5 million. Look at the departures, and the arrivals. 15 players leaving the club. 20 players coming in. And as we look through it as well, because this is the thing, what will be thrown at Nottingham Forest is this idea that what if they go down? And there is a problem with that, of course. But again, you need to look into the contracts of these players, but also the age of these players. What's quite interesting here is that actually they're buying a lot of players that, one, should be hungry, two, haven't actually proved it in the Premier League, but I think if you wipe away their name, look at kind of their attributes, you would suggest that these are Premier League players. I certainly believe it, right? So let's have a little look at that. Because this is, in terms of the date that the players have signed. Morgan Gibbs White has done it in the Championship, hasn't totally done it in the Premier League just yet. I mean, are they overpaying for him? Maybe. But I think it's one where they're okay to pay the 40-odd million if he delivers. And that's what it comes down to, right? Nico Williams, Awani, Emmanuel Dennis. Look at the age of these players. I think this is important. And then in terms of squad building, there's a sort of balance between players that are younger, but then the players that are older, you're hoping that will have a very strong and quick impact to this squad. Because if they are all young and don't have the experience, then they're in trouble. Brandon Aguilera, and he's what a boy needs. Forget it. He's not playing. So in terms of those older players that they brought through, right? Kouyaté, free transfer. Hennessy, free transfer. Are both of them going to start? Probably not. But are both of them, available to be stabilising figure in the squad if you need that experience. Premier League experience, he said. He sung. Yeah. So good, smart buys, right? You're not going to need them forever. Yes, you're not going to get any sell-on value. That's fine. But you know they're good eggs, right? You know they can cope with the Premier League as well. Broiler, guaranteed 7 out of 10. This guy's played 60-odd Champions League games. And, you know, for 8 million, it's not too much. Forget about Carl Jenkinson because he's gone to Melbourne. Jesse Lingard. Now, look, again, this is a free transfer. You've actually spent the money on the wages, really. So, and 29, he's not old, is he? He's a good player. So then when we get past that, age-wise, these are all players that you'll be able to sell on if it doesn't work in two ways. One, basically give yourself options actually with this window, because the age of these players, one, you could sell them on and you'll get good money back. Maybe not the same amount of money. There might be a loss, but you're in the Premier League, so you've already made a decent amount of money from that. Or secondly, you can go, no, guys, you're all going to stay and you're all going to get us back up. And this is a squad that obliterates the Championship. Absolutely obliterates it. So when you look at, say, a Norwich, now they're spending money and then there's like doubling down. And this is doubling down. And we'll look at that in a second in terms of the depth of the squad. But if you look at Norwich and the amount that they spent and they were looking to be sustainable, you've got to understand how attractive it is to go, not just spend, really spend. And especially because their hands were tied a little bit, Nottingham Forest. You know, Garner out, Zinkernagel out. We did a video on this earlier in the window talking about the players that they needed to bring in. But the players that were going in, Zinkernagel, Garner, Jed Spence, crucial players. Keenan Davis as well, crucial players. So when you go up, we know there's a gap. That gap needs to be plugged. So, you know, it's one of those where do you stop at 6? Do you stop at 7? At what point has it gone too far? That is a question for Nottingham Forest fans. Look, this will look really bad if they're 20th come February. But again, there is an element of safeguarding for them, because if they go down and keep the players, it's a young squad that will be desperate to get back into the Premier League. And you would imagine gives them a incredibly high chance of going up again. Look, the Championship is so difficult to predict. And you're seeing that with Norwich at this moment in time, although metrics don't totally back it up because they actually, are creating chances at times. But the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, they're spending a lot of money and they're tripling down, doubling down. All that matters is them staying up or not, or them having it sort of being safeguarded. I guess the one concern that you would have, but again, I think it's safeguarded by the age of these players, is that if these players don't work, when it comes to FFP, and we hope that they'll stick with that, they can't keep spending. But you have a squad here that could grow together, right? Let's have a look at the squad in terms of depth then, because I think that's something that's important to talk about as well with Steve Cooper. Steve Cooper likes to play this way, as I showed you on SofaScore links. The players that are sort of got borders around them, they are players that have been brought in. So this is the one concern that you probably have got to have. But once again, with 15 players that you're pretty certain aren't good enough for the Premier League, when you're making these changes, if you can have 2 good players in every position, you're in a good place, right? So, but when they're new signings, do they go into it and go, look, it's fair game, I'm new, you're new? Or someone like Yates, someone like Lewis O'Brien, let's say Lewis O'Brien, but Yates, is he going to be like fuming at the situation here because he's going to struggle to get into the team? I haven't even put Kouyaté in here, actually. Sorry. So you got Kouyaté in there as well. Pop him in quickly. Probably spelling it wrong. Apologies if I have. So he's another option for them. But in terms of options, I've gone with players that are starters in green, players that are squad players in yellow, and players that are surplus in red. And importantly here, for where they are at this moment in time, you have in several areas of the pitch 2 good options. Certainly in midfield. I think there's some question marks here. I'd love to know what you guys think. Does Lingard start this year? Have they kind of made a mistake with that because they thought they weren't going to get Gibbs White? Or are they relieving the pressure by having experienced heads alongside Gibbs White, where, when you need Gibbs White, you've got him, you can use him. And you can use him in a few different positions. Also, I guess the question is Steve Cooper adaptable when he's got so much going on and he's stepping up a level to try something new? Look, he's a very, very impressive coach. And I think that is one thing that does speak to me with the signing in particular of Emmanuel Dennis, because I feel like with Emmanuel Dennis, I don't see how he fits. Now, yes, he's played wide, and that's because that's how Watford have played. And maybe he sees that as someone who can kind of maybe be a Johnson replacement. I've maybe got him on the wrong side here. I mean, I'm not going to move him around, but is that something that he can play in that too? It's not something that we've seen, but it's obviously something that we may see. But broadly speaking, he's a wide forward. So if he is a wide forward, does that lend to the idea of playing differently? And will Nottingham Forest, who, again, if we're looking at this, the one problem when you play a back three is that you need three centre-backs at all times. So is there a possible move and Brentford did it a little bit in the second half of the season, where they played 5, gave themselves a base in terms of their points in the Premier League. But then when it was getting to a point where they probably need to sort of move the needle a bit, start to force the issue a bit, and they've got the players to do so, against the lesser teams in the Premier League, do you start to play a back 4? Could be an option for Nottingham Forest. And again, football is about options and answers. And they have spent a lot of money. Of course, it's a risk, but the league is awash with money. And if you can stay in the division, then you're fine. And again, look at the Fulhams and the Norwiches. What they haven't done, so there's 2 roads here. Brentford, incredibly smart in how they play pragmatically, and just get yourself to stay up if you can by doing that, having that physicality. Brighton did that for a long time, and then you start to bleed in and soften in terms of it being entertaining football. So that's one route, and one route that I believe Bournemouth are doing right now. They're going to kind of strip back and be very pragmatic, 2 up top. Or the other route is that you don't be afraid, spend the money, but make sure you're spending money on good players who are of a good age, a good profile, and are players that can grow with the club regardless of the division that you're in. That is what I believe is the idea here. You've also obviously got a manager who is, young and hungry himself as well. So it's one where, when you're throwing cash about, it does look a little bit ugly. Weirdly, it looks a bit cheap. But, the Premier League is the Premier League. It is what it is, and you've got to find a way to survive. So if you can bring together this squad, if you can create the right kind of culture, which I know is what Steve Cooper talks about a lot, you can find the strategy because you have options and answers. Because this is a team where you could play, I'm going to destroy this now, but you can play Dennis out wide. You can play Johnson on the right as well. You could play a 3, You could play Kouyate sitting here and defend for your lives. You could play a defensive midfielder there, and you could play a back 4. So many options. So I think it's interesting. I think in terms of sort of slamming them for it, I think it's a bit short-sighted. And we'll see, we will see. I think what it does is the base of the team, the baseline of the team is much higher than it ever could have been if they hadn't have spent this kind of cash. Very difficult because, culture is important and team spirit is important. But it's almost like if you'd made 6 changes, that might have kind of upset the apple cart, but just not gone full go with it, if that makes sense. With 16, what could be 17, I know it's an outrageous amount of money, but it almost turns into an international squad, and you've got the whole season to sort it out. And I think the other thing to remember is that, you have 7 days in between games here for Nottingham Forest. So Steve Cooper, being the great coach that he is, should be able to find the solutions. And again, he has the options that he needs as well. So interesting. Let me know your starting 11 for Nottingham Forest going forward. I'd love to know who's going to be missing out, because you've got Lingard in there. Awani has obviously come through. Dennis is going to want to play. You've got 4 midfielders there that can't all start. Kouyate, as I said as well, who probably will be a squad player. Very, very interesting times for Nottingham Forest. Let me know how you're feeling about it. If you're new to the channel and enjoyed this one, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.